Can you imagine how different your favorite book would sound if it were told through a different point of view? The perspective through which you tell your story can make a huge impact on the reading experience. So let's look at how choosing the right perspective can make or break a story. Point of view is the lens that your reader sees the story narrated through. Your choice in point of view can sometimes be determined by genre standards, but for the most part, all genres have a place for any point of view, though sometimes deviating from the norm may throw off readers. Make sure you do your research before settling on a point of view for your story, but also don't worry about your choice being ironclad. It's not as difficult to change down the line as it may seem. So let's get into understanding what the different options are when it comes to point of view. First, you have first person point of view. So, with first person point of view, your main character is the narrator of your story. So, in this case, the reader only knows what the main character knows, though you can play with the timeline to change things up a little bit. If, when the character is narrating, they're recounting the story as if they are telling someone something that happened in the past, you might have phrases like, "At least that's what I believed at the time," or "Little did I know what would turn out to be true." On the other hand, you can have the reader experience the events of the story with the main character as they're happening. And this way, it's more like the reader is sitting inside the mind of the main character as the events of the story are happening, and they're kind of going along the journey with the character. So the narration in first person will use language like, "I did this, I wanted to say that," or "he told me whatever." You can find first person point of view books in pretty much every genre, though it is disproportionately often used in young adult books, as younger readers tend to prefer it. When written well, this point of view makes it really easy for readers to connect with the main character, as they can see their thoughts and feelings and experiences in a really direct and personal way. So, first person does have some limitations, namely that your readers have a limited perspective of the story and there can be potential biases of your main character. But these can also be used in very interesting and creative ways to add depth or even mystery to your story. When we're talking about fiction, second person point of view is used pretty infrequently, but it does pretty much define the genre of the choose your own adventure novels that we all loved in grade school. Second person is unique in fiction because it directly involves the reader, using language like "you did this, you wanted to say that, you told them whatever." You'll definitely see second person a lot in nonfiction, of course. This one is kind of the odd point of view out, as the writer kind of defines how much the readers know as the story progresses. It is an interesting and somewhat limited point of view, but it can be used in totally interesting and unique ways. So third person limited is probably the most common point of view used in fiction overall, but it totally depends on the genre. So with third limited, the story is told through the perspective of one character at a time, and the narrator is not this character. So just like with first person, when it comes to third limited, the reader only knows what the character does at that point in time. But this point of view typically lends itself better to books with multiple point of view characters. Third limited just makes it a little easier to switch between characters from one chapter or scene to the next, but people absolutely do have books with multiple point of views told in first person. So it's really up to you what you want to do, but that's just what's more commonly done. And the narration in Third Limited uses language like "he did this, she wanted to do that, he told them." Third Limited is also prevalent in most genres of fiction, but certain subgenres of fantasy and contemporary strongly prefer it. Again, just research your genre and see what's being done most commonly, and then make your choice based on that. So, to me personally, Third Limited feels like a very natural way to write a novel. I personally much prefer writing in Third Limited than in first person because I like the way that it reads. This point of view is, of course, very common across all kinds of genres, and it provides you a broader view of the story while still being able to maintain a close connection to a single character at a time. It's very flexible and allows you to easily explore different characters' perspectives while transitioning the readers seamlessly between characters. You can have a book in Third Limited following just one character's point of view or an entire cast of characters. So the difficult thing for me with Third Limited is actually keeping it consistent. It can be very easy to accidentally write in some information that the focus character shouldn't know at that point in time. For example, like the emotion another character is feeling during a scene, or some event that happened somewhere else in the story that that character shouldn't know about yet, but somehow you accidentally gave them that information. Third person Omniscient is definitely less popular than Third Limited, but when it's done well, it can make a really interesting reading experience. In Third Omniscient, the narrator knows everything. They know the thoughts and feelings of every character, all the events that are happening in the story, events that have occurred in the past, events that will happen in the future. Basically, if you have a god complex, this might be the point of view for you. Third Omniscient is not limited to seeing inside one character's head at a time, but rather allows the narrator to express any information that they would like at any point in the story, from any point in the story. The narration in Third Omniscient uses language like "he did this, she wanted to say, he told them." But it also adds the option to write things like "he wanted to know why, but she didn't want to tell him," and things like "none of them knew the true reason, and only one person ever would." So personally, I'm a big fan of Third Omniscient, but it really only lends itself well to a few select genres, in my opinion. Mostly like fantasy and sci-fi epics, and a lot of literary fiction. It is also a difficult point of view to write a compelling novel with. It is really easy to make a story in Third Omniscient sound bland or confuse the readers by jumping around. You have to really carefully craft your narrative voice and make sure the characters are strong enough to hold the reader's attention. Third Omniscient lends itself really well to larger casts of characters and stories where there are lots of moving pieces that you want to give the reader glimpses into. While we're talking about Third Omniscient, I definitely want to touch on head hopping for a second. So, head hopping refers to a sudden shift in perspective or point of view without clear transitions or narrative control. It basically involves rapidly jumping from one character's point of view to another without a clear transition and without a clear or strong narrative voice. Head hopping can create confusion for readers as the rapid shift in perspective can disrupt the narrative flow and make it challenging to connect with a particular character, as they all sort of tend to sound the same. Though some people would argue that is the whole point of Third Omniscient, I believe the distinction lies with the intention, the narration style, and the ease of the transitions. So, Third Omniscient is a deliberate choice made by the writer, while head hopping is seen as more of a narrative flaw or a lack of writing skill. Third Omniscient requires a strong narrative voice that can easily make transitions. If the writing moves from one voice to another within a single scene or chapter, this is viewed as head hopping. But if the writing just shows what multiple characters are thinking or feeling within the same narrative voice, the same omniscient voice, this is not viewed as head hopping. Head hopping is uncommon and typically unfavored in modern writing as it can be disorienting for readers. So nowadays, we typically go for a more controlled approach to perspective shifts with clear transitions or chapter breaks to indicate the change in point of view. When choosing a point of view for your story, there are many factors to consider, but ultimately it is up to you and what you feel best represents the story that you want to tell. Genre will play a large role in what you choose, especially if you're writing to market. You can pretty easily look at a whole bunch of the top-selling books in your subgenre using the Amazon Look Inside feature. With this, you can easily skim the first few pages and get an idea on what everybody else is doing. You'll also, of course, want to figure out if these books are usually multi-POV or not, and only look at ones that match your plan for your book. Also, you have to consider your narrative style as well, and which you feel fits it best. So, would your story be more dynamic if you could see deeper into the main character's thoughts? Or would a wider lens, like Third Limited, allow you more room to look at multiple characters more easily? Consider if it would help the reader more easily understand the different characters if both sides of your dual POV story were told in first person. In the romance genre, for example, many writers typically go with a dual point of view, but they have the hero in first-person point of view and the love interest in third-person point of view. This allows the readers to see the other side of things that are happening or to find out what was happening during times the main character wasn't around. Also, take your main character as a person into consideration. If their personality is a bit more difficult to understand, first person may give you a bit of extra space to show your readers exactly what they're thinking and feeling in a more direct and personal way. If you're unsure, it is really helpful to experiment with the different point of view options. You can take one chapter and edit it with two different point of views and just see what happens. You can even use AI like ChatGPT to help you do this. I took the first couple pages of my current work in progress, a fantasy titled Revenge of the Druid Queen, and used ChatGPT to have it write it in second person. It actually sounded really cool, and it kind of made me want to write something like that in a world like this in the future. So you can see how your choice in point of view shapes the reader's experience and also influences the narrative's effectiveness. It's really helpful to know what others in your genre are doing, but don't be afraid to try out different ideas and see if it might work better for your individual story. You can check out my AI-generated novella Legends of the Shadow Woods or dive into the world of Alexia with some free short stories linked down below. Alright, that's all I got for you, so thanks for watching. Bye!